Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the StattoJoe podcast, live on Facebook and YouTube. I'm StattoJoe, and I'm joined by the Enigma, Luke Sherwin. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. But Joe, it could be better because the problem is that Arsenal try to walk the ball into the back of the net. But good to be back, ready to chat through some things on a lovely Wednesday evening.
It's a good time for us to kind of go through our team of the seasons. That's the plan for tonight. We've picked our Premier League team of the seasons. Now that the domestic and European campaigns have all finished, we're kind of in this 2-week lull period. So we're going to go through our team of the seasons, and then at the end, once we've done that, we will be comparing the team of the seasons that we choose to the team of the season according to the stats. So this is going to be an interesting one. I think there's a few surprises in there. I know that, just a caveat, for the stats team of the season, you have to have played at least 19 games in the season. So you have to have played at least half the games in the season. Mikey, welcome in, sir. How's it going? Hope you're well. You're going to be a big fan of Luke's tonight. I think there's an individual in Luke's team of the season that's going to make you very, very happy, sir. We'll dive straight into it, I think. I'm going to start by going through the players that we both agreed on. Most of them are not really big surprises, and then we'll do a more in-depth discussion into the places that we disagree on. So the first spot is the goalkeeper. You and I both chose Emi Martinez. Round of applause. Well done, Emi Martinez. He had a fantastic season for Aston Villa. He made a big signing over to West Ham. He moved from Arsenal to Aston Villa, and a big signing, which ultimately maybe Arsenal will regret, because he had a fantastic season. He made 15 clean sheets this season for Villa in the Premier League and had an average rating of 7.18. Look, what are your overall thoughts on Martinez this season?
Yeah, so I think he's had a good season, all things considered. He has played really well, I think, is the big thing. You could look at certain goalkeepers and think that they've had a better season, maybe looking at clean sheets, things like that. But all things considered, when you look at how well he's played, his general performances, match-winning saves, potentially in there as well, that have kept Villa in games. Villa started the season really well, and everyone kind of credits Jack Grealish as being responsible for that. Mm-hmm. But I think Emi Martinez is the reason that Villa didn't go any deeper in the Premier League table than they ended up finishing. What about you?
Yeah, and I think the reason that I've put him in there and that we've put him in there as well is that contextually, his performances were a lot bigger compared to Ederson, for example. Ederson's world class and probably statistically was maybe slightly better, but I think in terms of the context of the team that he was playing for, he was probably having to face more shots at goal, and to achieve 15 clean sheets, which I'm pretty sure matched the record with was it Brad Friedel? Did they both get 15 clean sheets in the season? I think it was something like that. Anyway, it was a big achievement for him. Mark Stewart just randomly let us know that Ollie Watkins is overrated.
I don't know about that, but sure.
And Alisson got the golden boot for keepers, which, if that existed, would be true.
Very
statistically
true.
And factually correct there from Matthew Rain. We move on then from...
Although we should give Ederson credit. He did get 19 clean sheets. He got given Golden Glove. Ederson got it, but I think the reason that we picked Martinez is because Ederson had two really good centre-backs in front of him. Mings and Konsa aren't quite the same quality as Diaz and Stones. I think Emi Martinez was slightly better, all things considered. But yes, next position.
So the two centre-backs we both agreed on as well. I don't think this is a surprise, although we will get into the second one. But the first one really was Ruben Diaz, who was actually a surprise entity. He came into Man City quite late on in the transfer window because they had signed Ake. Did he get injured maybe and had to bring in someone else? They brought in Ruben Diaz, and this season he's been involved with 15 clean sheets. and he has an average rating this season of 7.16. This is all these, by the way, these figures are for the Premier League only. Diaz is B-Tech Van Dijk. Josh says that Ederson could have read the newspaper with a digestive half the season, which actually is probably true because the centre-backs were so good. Diaz had a fantastic season. For all the talk of teams that come in and struggle with, or the players that come in from overseas and struggle with adapting to the Premier League and the style of football, Diaz came in and just dominated the centre-back position. Probably was, Man City's Van Dijk, essentially, this year.
Absolutely, and I think he adapted so well because of how Man City play. Nat Phillips, surely Josh Ryan said, well, we haven't revealed our second choice yet, so just you wait and see. But Ruben Diaz came in to a system that dominates possession, that has a lot of the ball, and is looking to be counter-attacked, but he knows he's not going to go that far forward, and he also has rapid wing-backs beside him, which are a big help, so I think Ruben Diaz has done really well. You say relatively unknown. If you play Football Manager, you know exactly who this man is. This man has been like a wonder kid on Football Manager for quite a few seasons, and everybody that plays Football Manager in depth will know who Ruben Diaz was and knew when they signed him that he could be absolutely phenomenal. And thankfully, he's gone on to show that he is. It's a fantastic signing from Man City, and just a really nice player to watch. I think he's done a really good job. Nat Phillips basically shored up the back four, a big reason for top four. I think that's true to an extent, absolutely. But we're not talking about Nat Phillips. So Ruben Diaz, great.
If it was team of the last 2 months, you'd maybe put Nat Phillips in. But over the course of the season, I think I maybe would. But over the course of the season, the second centre back has to be his centre back partner, really, John Stones. Pretty sure we both went for him. John Stones. It was the return. It was the return of the Jedi. He came back. Had a pretty tough time at City to begin with. And interestingly, now I thought this was fascinating. So John Stones only played 19 Premier League games this season, right?
That's crazy.
In those 19 Premier League games, City had 14 clean sheets. 14 clean sheets. Sorry, not 19, 22. Apologies, 22. Yeah. 22 Premier League games and 14 clean sheets. Josh again said Stones like Bambi on ice. I thought Stones was fantastic this season. He scored a couple of goals. Defensively looked really solid. Pretty much, I think, has played his way into that England team for the Euros, potentially.
Absolutely.
Really commanding and really solid.
I think John Stones this season he's been put beside a really good player in Ruben Diaz, and that has helped a lot. And it's really made a difference to how he plays because he looks way more confident. When you play knowing that you're not the only one relied upon to do well, it helps. And he came in, most people expected he's Eric Laporte to be the partner beside Ruben Diaz. They expected Diaz and left-footed Laporte beside him to be a really good partnership. But John Stones played so well this season that he kicked world-class. I'm Eric Laporte. I would consider Laporte in the top 10 centre-backs in the world still. And John Stones has kicked them out. In fact, I was reading an article just the other day, and a certain website had ranked John Stones as the 4th best centre-back in the world right now, which is crazy talk that I would never have predicted this time last year. Yeah. I love the stat whenever Ruben Diaz and John Stones have been playing. I think they had played 11 games together, and in those 11 games they had scored more goals than they had conceded.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was nuts. They had scored 5 and conceded 4 or something like that. Josh says John Stones is not top 4 in the world. Based on this season, I think you could make an argument that he is, and definitely within Europe as well. Slabhead is better than Stones. I think Maguire. So Maguire, I think, deserves a special mention because I think this season Maguire has actually been really good and has made made Man United a much better team at the back.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that partnership, Stones and Diaz, if that plays for a few more seasons together, could be one that goes down in Premier League history alongside the likes of a Vidic and a Ferdinand, or that type of partnership,
See,
a Terry Carvalho.
the thing is with City, whenever they brought John Stones in and they started that Diaz and John Stones partnership, that was the beginning of City's unbelievable unbeaten run, where they just went
Yeah,
and won like 13 or 14 games in a row. So I think that's not really a coincidence. Those
no.
two clicked really, really well and were fantastic. They mentioned earlier, Mark mentioned earlier about Havertz getting the best of Diaz. We've spoken about that on Saturday night. I felt that it was the tactics rather than the players that let them down there. In terms of, I would have felt a CDM and there might have made a difference, but you can't really. That's speculation. It could have just been a bad night.
Yeah. I
Josh
would
says
say
Van Dijk, Diaz, Ramos, Koulibaly, Eric Dyer. Eric easily
Eric
easy
Dyer,
five to the top of my head.
fantastic choice. Koulibaly, I think, is a choice that's been put in there based on FIFA more than anything else. I don't think you've probably seen Koulibaly play more than 5 games ever. But if you have, fair enough. Koulibaly's decent, but I don't know how well he would do in the Premier League, to be fair. But yeah, I think John Stones and Diaz played really well all season together, and it'd be strange for us to leave either of them out, I think. And so that's why we've included both of them as our two at the back in front of Emi Martinez.
We also agreed on left back then.
Absolutely.
We agreed that left back for us was Luke Shaw, who again had a breakout season, kind of another return of the Jedi as such. He struggled since he broke his leg. He came back for United, and United were a leaky defence. Let's not gloss over that. When I was looking at his stats for the season, and in the games, I think he played 35 games, something like that. There was 10 clean sheets in the Premier League, but he did make 6 goal contributions, 5 assists and a goal, and he averaged a rating of 7.12. Now, United were leaky, but United also won games. They were undefeated away from home all season, which they're the only the third club to ever do that. And he was he was like a new man this season. He was so good. Everybody was raving about him. Everybody that I saw, anyway. What are your kind of thoughts?
I think starting 30 games this season has been one of the best things for him. It's the first time that we've seen a real consistency from him since he left Southampton. Injuries had kind of hit him all of the other seasons that he'd been at United. And so it's been really helpful for him to play that many games, averaging 83 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to pick up that form, play a lot of minutes, and just get involved. He had a pretty good passing accuracy all season with 85%, and from a left back, that's pretty decent. He was much better than he has been in everything. His stats aren't ridiculously good.
No.
But I think his influence in the team and just how he went about himself this season put him above most other left backs that were in the Premier League.
We lost Luke.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
I think my Wi-Fi died there, but
I'm not sure.
Keep going.
But yeah, Luke Shaw much better. But in saying that, I don't know if there's just a lack of left backs right now in the Premier League. Because Luke Shaw was decent, but Andy Robertson, had he played well this season, is better than him.
Yep.
If Kieran Tierney wasn't in such an average Arsenal team, I would say is potentially better than him as well. But Luke Shaw deserves credit. 10 clean sheets, 5 assists, 1 goal. Yeah, pretty solid.
It was decent. We didn't agree on the right back. We will get back to that later on. We're going to continue with the ones that we did agree with. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the first midfielder that we agreed on was this man here, Mason Mount.
Absolutely, it was. What a guy. Mason Mount,
yeah.
Frank Lampard's favourite child, as he was dubbed by many last season. Most people thought he was the only the only thing that Frank Lampard liked about Chelsea. He had a whole, mass of riches at Chelsea, and yet he kept picking Mason Mount, and people slagged him off. They're like, "Oh, he's the
Mm.
PE teacher's favorite child," blah blah blah, things like that. But Mason Mount this season has showed a consistency and a maturity that I think has really taken his game to the next level this season. What do you think?
I think he's been exceptional. I think I was highlighted with the pass that ultimately won the Champions League on Saturday. I know this is all about the Premier League, but I think as an all-round player, he's been superb. He's run that Chelsea midfield. He's been one of their key players, and as Lampard was going and he gave him the captain's armband, that was kind of a sign um, that this is the guy that I put my trust in. And then Tuchel kept with him, gave him a chance, and then stuck with him. And he's proven himself, and he's grown as a player a lot this season. Statistically, it's not like eye-catching numbers, but it's in fact you might say they sound a bit poor. 6 goals and 5 assists, but he does have an average rating of 7.22, which is the highest so far. And I think that a lot of his ability comes from his ability to create chances rather than actually directly setting up goals.
Yeah, he's the type of player who'll have a lot of. If this was hockey, he would have a lot of hockey assists, which is the pass before the pass that leads to the goal. I think Mason Mount would have quite a few of those in passing it to someone who then creates the goal. He's also not going to score all the goals because obviously he's in a team who loves to score goals, and as a striker like Timo Werner who loves to put the ball in the back of the net. So obviously he's not going to score. This kind of reminds me of like Ozil in his prime with Giroud. Do you remember the first half of the season? Ozil had like 13 assists and was way on track to beat the record for most assists in a season. And then it turned out that Olivier Giroud was the player in front of him. And Olivier Giroud went through a terrible 5-month spell from January to May and single-handedly cost Ozil that award. And this almost, I think, is what's happened to Mason Mount this season. Now, Mason Mount has run games. He has, especially at the start of the season when Kante wasn't really getting a shout by Lampard for some reason.
Yeah.
The PE teacher's favorite child was still playing, and he was playing every game. He played 32, or he started 32 games, played 36 in total. A lot of game time, and he just ran the show with a terrible striker in front of him, with an average defense behind him for the first half of the season. Mason Mount showed his class. I think a maturity that was unexpected. And then when Lampard left, I think many expected him to drop out with the likes of Ziyech to come in, with the likes of Pulisic to get more time, Hudson-Odoi even to get more time. But Mason Mount stepped up to the mark and said, "Nah, this is my Chelsea team," and I think he staked his claim as being a future Chelsea captain for years to come.
Agreed. Don't even need to say anything else because I totally agree with you. The next midfielder that we both agreed upon was this man, Ilkay Gundogan. Yes, might have dropped off slightly towards the end of the season. However, the numbers he produced this season at a time when City were really struggling, he kind of brought about a bit of resurgence up front. He was scoring goals that no one expected him to. And this season, he managed 13 goals and 2 assists with an average rating of 7.27. Now that's impressive for a midfielder of any standard, especially whenever a lot of his goals came from open play. He wasn't scoring a lot of penalties.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And one of the key things, and the reason I included him, is because most of his goals and his good performances came when they needed him.
Yep.
They came when De Bruyne was injured. They came in that spell. We highlighted earlier that mad run that City went on, that Stones and Diaz played together in. Gundogan was almost the leading charge in that.
Yep.
Stones and Diaz sat back and held everything firm, but Gundogan led them forward and scored ultimately, I think, 11 of his goals or something in like 10 games in that time period. He scored a lot of goals, 13 goals and 2 assists in 23 starts in the Premier League. That's a crazy record from a player in midfield who wasn't really known as a goal-scoring midfielder. Again, we're talking about Premier League, but Gundogan started all 12 or Champions League games as well. Is there 12? Yeah, no, there is. Is there 14?
Yeah, there's
12.
Yeah, there's an odd number.
There's
6.
14.
There's 13. 13.
13. 13.
Yeah.
So he didn't play one game out of the whole
Mhm.
Champions League run. The fact that Pep has such faith in him, I think, speaks volumes. He's a player who normally wouldn't get that much recognition, but this season has got more recognition because he's had to add goals to his game. When
Mhm.
asked to deliver, he delivered, and that's why he makes it into our team. When he started 23 Premier League games, played 28 in total, but 5 Team of the Weeks in that, 13 goals. Just a really good player all around that I didn't see coming. But as I mentioned last week, actually, in the intro to the podcast, check out our podcast on Google
Cheap plug.
Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to hear the extra bonus intros and outros. But I named him as my only surprise of the season because
Yeah.
nobody saw this coming. And he's just played really well and really consistently. What do you think?
I remember he came in with a decent level of hype about him, but then like didn't deliver to the levels that people were kind of expecting, or maybe wasn't uh, obvious enough, kind of the level that he was at. And then this season he kind of dragged City through by the scruff of their neck and was scoring goals at a striker's rate. Really, he was scoring goals for fun over that Christmas period. And I think ultimately was the catalyst to their unbeaten run. His goals kind of
Yeah.
and the goal he scored so many important goals he kind of brought about that kind of good run and form. But for the midfield, that's all we agree on. So we'll
Well,
need to
we only have 3 midfielders, so we agreed on 2 of them. That's
agree
not
on two. Yeah,
That's
I
not that
suppose.
crazy. But while we're here, I guess we should give a shout out to Fabinho, because he is a midfielder ultimately. Josh says here Fabinho has to get a mention. Literally has go gadget legs, can just kind of play anywhere, sort of vibe. I think Fabinho had a case of good at everything, excellent at nothing this season. In
Mm,
terms of, I think he did what he had to do when he was asked to do it. But like when he played centre back, he was good. He was good, but he wasn't the best centre back in the league. And when he was playing in midfield, he couldn't stand out as much because the players
yep.
around him, namely Thiago, weren't playing overly well at times. Towards the end of the season, absolutely, they started to click and they started to make things happen. And then the attackers weren't great. And so I think Fabinho was kind of hurt a little by the players around him, unlike Mason Mount, who we think played really well in spite of all of that.
Yeah.
But that's just
I
my
think
thoughts anyway.
Fabinho was also a victim to the system a bit because he was forced to play a position that isn't his first choice position for a lot of the season, and didn't, unfortunately was one of those players where Liverpool had that like at 300 million centre backs injured, so we need to find someone else to come in and step in. So Fabinho had to do a job there. He didn't have a bad season. It wasn't a standout season, but you know, again we've got another Matthew Reid with another deluded Liverpool comment saying best centre half and CDM. Just
On his day, he is
not
in the
this season
debate
though.
for best CDM 100%.
Yeah,
But this season didn't show that. This
no,
season didn't really get going because he didn't ever really got consistently playing at CDM this season. At center back, he did well, but that was comparatively to what they had. Like he's not Van Dijk, he's not Gomez. He did well to lead the line, but Liverpool went through a terrible run, and
mm,
ultimately Fabinho was part of that.
yeah. But we do agree entirely on the front three.
Did we agree on all 3?
All three.
Look at that.
Um, so we'll go the obvious one. Well, there's two obvious ones, I think, and they are the first one for me is Harry Kane, obviously.
Yes.
Um, a one season wonder for
It's a
the
real
sixth
shame
season in
he
a
was
row.
one season wonder.
Um,
His
and
his stats this season were absolutely ridiculous.
ridiculous.
He
His
had
numbers are ridiculous.
he had no right to be doing anything that he was doing. Like he was in a very average Tottenham team this
Yeah,
season, a Tottenham team that will be playing in the Europa Conference League, and I'm not
yeah,
surprised that now he wants to be leaving and moving on. He's absolutely bumlicking Kevin De Bruyne because he wants to play and get the
yeah,
creativity there.
absolutely.
Harry Kane started 35 games in the Premier League this season, got 23 goals and 14 assists.
Yeah.
37 goal involvements in 35 games in a rubbish team.
Yeah.
Like that,
Just
those numbers are mad.
talk about carrying. Like literally talk about carrying a team. Like
His back must be aching.
I know. And the goals he was scoring as well, some poachers' goals, some screamers, is the thing that he added to his game, and I think he credits Mourinho for a lot of this, is his creativity and that's where the assists came in. I think he gave Jose a lot of credit for that. And another excellent season. Like we shouldn't be surprised now, but Harry Kane
No,
is one of the best strikers in the world. Easily,
easily.
easily.
I think second only to Lewandowski.
Yeah, I think so
I think
too.
right now in world football, but then Lewandowski is so good,
Yeah,
but doesn't get anywhere near as many assists as Kane did. And so goal scoring wise, you might argue Lewandowski is better, but in general play, Harry Kane's really staking his claim here. I'm not saying necessarily he's better than Lewandowski, but the way he does everything has improved massively. The
yeah,
way he drops deep has improved. And that's almost it's what kind of has happened to Messi over the last few years, is because Messi doesn't really trust the players around him as much. Um, Matthew Rain coming in here saying nowhere close to that season with Suarez in it. That season, Liverpool nearly won the league because Suarez carried us. Kane isn't good enough to do it and carry Spurs to the title. Suarez, the best striker in world football. He was the best striker in world football at the time. Suarez,
yeah. Don't
absolutely.
disagree with that either.
Kane consistently showed up and was let down consistently by the rest of his team. The rest of his team being bang average has really cost him. Suarez, I don't know if you watch a lot of Spanish football. Suarez has been a really good poacher this season and has scored goals when needed to. But in terms of all round play, Kane is miles above Luis Suarez at this current stage, and that's just because Suarez is getting old and his legs are gone. And Suarez has scored the goals when needed to, but doesn't really do anything else for Atletico Madrid. The rest of the team deserve a lot of credit, not just Suarez. Suarez is getting a lot of praise. But anyway, that's beside the point. Harry Kane has been absolutely superb. Harry Kane has been so good.
Doesn't matter. Suarez wins. Partly, that's fine. That's fair. I think you can't even. I don't think you can compare Harry Kane with Luis Suarez because I think they're on two completely different levels. Suarez is world class still, which is exceptional for the age he's at, and he did score important goals for Atletico Madrid, and ultimately Atletico Madrid did win the title. But Harry Kane was playing in such an uninspiring squad and was creating chances from nothing and was scoring goals from nothing. And sure, but yeah, I think Kane is an obvious candidate for the Premier League striker. Like, there's just no question. The next one, which is relatively obvious, um, for both of us, was of course Mo Salah. Again, he had a fantastic season. We can talk a wee bit about how inefficient Salah is. However, we can't take away from the fact that Salah scores goals for fun.
He
This season,
does.
he scored 22 goals and had 5 assists, where he averaged 7.13. So Salah is your goal scorer, but doesn't create the same way because very often, and I think people would agree with me on this, Salah can be quite greedy on the ball at times. Um, does pass from? I'm not saying he doesn't pass the ball. I'm saying that he's a lot more greedy than Harry Kane would be. Also, another thing to note with Salah is if Salah had been firing on all cylinders this season, he probably would have scored a lot more. Like Salah missed a few massive chances this season, and still managed to score 22 goals. For me, the people that aren't putting Salah in the question for Player of the Year this year, I think that's a bit absurd because I think he's had a really good season again. And I think you need to also take into consideration that he's playing at, he was matching the top strike. In fact, he was the second best goal scorer in the league at a team that were really struggling for a large period of the season.
Yeah.
And he was still missing a lot. So I think for me, Salah did really, really well. Do you have any thoughts before we answer Matthew's question?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there. 22 goals for a winger. Let's
Hmm.
not forget he is a winger. Ultimately, inside forward, similar vibe. Hard to know what position Salah really plays and what to put him as. But he scores goals. He scored a lot of games. He averages roughly 3.5 shots a game.
Hmm.
Um, and so to be able to score 22 goals is pretty good. He's not missing that many. Um, he did, however, miss. I say that, and then I'm about to contradict myself. He missed 19 big chances, apparently,
Yeah.
um, which I think is poor. It's almost like half them that he misses, big chances wise. But he is a phenomenal player, and one that definitely has played well enough to be in the team of the year and is in the debate for player of the year. I think he almost got to the stage this season where he lost a little bit of trust in Mane
Yep.
because Mane was playing so badly. I would have felt exactly the same way if I was Salah. Obviously, I'm not, but I would have been entirely frustrated with Mane because he kept missing simple chances, difficult chance. He missed every chance, Mane, really, that he got.
Mm.
And so Salah deserves a lot of credit for this season.
Definitely. And before we move on to our last agreement, Matthew asks, is Mo Salah better than Ronaldo in the Prem at their primes? That was a bit of a tongue twister.
I personally would say yes,
Yep.
but I'm a well-known Ronaldo hater. But I I think in terms of goal scoring, he definitely I mean that's not a debate in
Yep.
terms of goals in your first 150 games or whatever. Salah is up there in terms of with the elite Premier League strikers of the world. In history, he was above Thierry Henry with goals after 150 games. Like that is
Hmm.
mad, considering as well some of those games were played for Chelsea in which he never really played, and maybe
Yep.
got 10 minutes at the end. His stats are nuts, and he has a real benefit of playing in a really great Liverpool team most of the time. Shame he's a one-season wonder too.
Hmm.
Ronaldo was great, but Ronaldo also was in a really great team,
Hmm.
played winger, and maybe that's one of the differences in why we say yes is because Ronaldo played alongside world-class strikers. Salah's never done that at Liverpool. He's played alongside Mane, who's world class. He's played alongside Firmino, who's very good, but neither of them are strikers. Whereas Wayne Rooney, Carlos Tevez, and Dimitar Berbatov were all goal scorers. And so maybe does that take away from his goal scoring, Ronaldo's in the Premier League, and make Salah look slightly better? Potentially, and maybe the debate isn't as clear cut as I thought it was.
There's probably you'd have a fair argument either way. I would say. I think there's fair argument for both sides. Um, Matthew's away to bed, no problem. Thank you for stopping by. Um, Finally, our last pick that we agree on before we move on to our disagreements is Riyad Mahrez, a player for me who constantly seems to surprise because, like, he was great at Leicester and then he went to City, and then I was like, oh, I don't know if he'll do it at City. And then even if he did well at City, I'd be like, oh, I'm still not sure if he's good enough. And then he'd keep doing well, and I'd still batter him. But I did think this season in particular for me stands out as a really fantastic season for Riyad Mahrez. Um,
Yeah, if we're talking just Premier League, it's harder because he only started 23 games, but in those games, he had 9 goals and 6 assists,
yeah.
um, which isn't unbelievable, but still is very good. In a team that has plenty of people scoring goals, as we mentioned, Gundogan earlier scoring goals and things like that. But I just thought he would always show up when City needed him,
Hmm.
apart from the Champions League final. But that is another story because Premier League wise, just was very consistent, showing signs of that unbelievable season at Leicester, showing signs of the world class player that he was and continues to be.
Hmm.
Average rating this season of a 7.26. Anything above a 7 is good
Yep.
for anyone. but a 7.26 is starting to show, upper echelons of the league. And so I think, yeah, Mahrez was my pick. I just think the issue was that there's not been that many great attackers this season, wing wise. I don't think he had as much competition as potentially he could have done.
Mm.
Um, what are your thoughts?
I just thought he was. I think a lot of it is about being consistently good. Um, I think he was
Yeah,
one of those players that was just consistently good throughout the season. You do have players who go through peaks and troughs,
yeah.
but I think
I
Mahrez always kind of held at that consistent level.
Yeah, and I think a prime example, people will say, why is Son not in either of your
Yeah,
teams? And that is a valid point because he played 36 games, started 36 games, had 17 goals and 10 assists. Like those numbers are nuts, but I think he peaked massively at the start of the season
yeah.
and then towards the end of the season really dropped off. Like Mahrez never really had any games where he was bad, whereas Son did this season. Son had games where he actively was not playing well. I think that's the thing. Like Son in the second half of the season didn't play well, let his performances drop, while Kane, kept his high.
Mm. I had a massive debate between Son and Mahrez. I really did. I was really thinking about it, unsure what to do. Ultimately picked Mahrez just because of the consistency, but I think there's a recency bias as well. I think if you think recently, I think Son has kind of been non-existent in the last while, whereas Mahrez has played well, and I think that that's always going to kind of be in your mind whenever you're picking these teams. But now that we've picked the players that we agree on, which I think we agreed on, let me double check here. 1, 2,
Nine
3,
out of 11.
4, 9 of 11. So there's only two positions we don't agree on.
Yeah,
So we both picked the same formations.
yeah. Four,
We
three,
both picked
three.
4-3-3s. The first position we disagreed on was right back. Look, we'll start with your pick. You went for Vladimir Kufal
I
of
did
West Ham.
indeed. I think Vladimir Kufal has had a really good season, especially because it's his first season, isn't it, in the Premier League?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, he joined in the latter end of 2020. Um, he played in a West Ham team that had no right to finish where they did in the league. And one of the reasons he did so was, or they did so, was because Kufal played so well. And Souček was also a debate I had. I nearly included him in my team, but I couldn't justify it enough to put him in. But performances by them, and then ultimately Jesse Lingard as well, when he came in, pushed West Ham up the table. And
Mm-hmm.
Kufal played well. He had 7 assists all season, which is
Yep,
good. And I
good.
weighed that against some other people at right back, which was so he was slightly better than my other potential choice. 9 clean sheets for West Ham is very impressive.
Yep.
Like that's very good. I guess the other player I'm weighing him up against, I can't even remember who you picked at right back. Um, but if it was a certain Man City player that I weighed Kufal up against, then I just felt like Cancelo could rely on his centre backs more, whereas Kufal couldn't, and that
Mm.
almost made his performances even better because he was doing it all on his own.
I actually didn't go for the Man City right back.
No, you didn't. Nice. Well,
No.
yeah, that was my debate. Was Cancelo? Cancelo had less assists, but generally played very well.
Yep.
Um, but I think had more freedom to do everything else and score goals and make chances because his centre backs were so good. Whereas Kufal in an average enough West Ham team that played very well together as a unit did a
Mm-hmm.
really good job, and I think Kufal deserves it. Fair play to the lad.
I I went for Reece James.
Oh, interesting.
Um, I think this was a massive breakout season for him, and that's
Yeah,
kind of why I picked him. I think so for me, he should be. Oh, I don't know. I don't know now. I've already had another debate. I was going to say he should be England's number one right back. But I think he's superb. I think Reece James was
yeah,
fantastic this season. Um, I think he was helped massively with the experience in the Chelsea training squad with Thiago Silva being there, Rudiger being there. There's good experienced centre backs there that'll help him out. But I just thought that he was next level this season, and brought in great performances. If I just look quickly, 9
Statistically
clean sheets.
wise, nowhere near as good as Kufal, arguably.
Arguably, yes, but it depends. Like I see, obviously, it depends what type of player you're looking for. I quite liked the package that Reece James brings as a
No,
player.
I agree.
Um,
I do think he
I
had a
think
really good season. I do think
it
Reece
was
James had a
it,
good season.
it was between Cancelo and Reece James for me, to be honest. I also think you can't. I actually don't think you can discount Trent at all. Trent's numbers this season are actually very good.
They are.
Um, and I think what lets him down the most was the number of times that he gave the ball away.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what made him was what took him out of the equation for me. But his numbers were still great this season. He was one of the highest average ratings in the league this season.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he
At
just
times, he was an agent of his own demise, an agent of Liverpool's own demise, in that he almost made the Liverpool defensive situation worse at times by giving the ball away at the worst
yeah.
possible times, so that the centre backs came under more pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Trent also is in a case of the Messi situation of we just expect so much from him that when he dips below that, it's hard to justify how good he's actually been, despite the fact he might have still been one of the best in the league.
Mm-hmm. And then the midfielder, I'll go first, and
Okay.
I picked this player, and I think it'll maybe be not a shock, but a wee bit of a shock. I went for Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah.
Didn't have his best. He didn't have his best season by any means. I'm not ever like. I don't think he was the best player in that 11 that I have. But he still had a good season. His average rating this season was 7.8, which is the highest in the league. He played
Yeah.
less games. His numbers aren't as good as even Gundogan. So he's got 6 goals and 12 assists. So he does have more goal contributions. A lot of that are assists. But I think for me, Kevin De Bruyne was still great this season when he played. He does bring a difference to that City team. We saw the difference whenever he came off in the Champions League final, kind of firsthand. But for me, I think he's influential in teams, and I think that for me, he had to stay in.
Yeah.
That's really all I
Fair
have to
enough.
say.
12 assists for a player who's only started 23 games is very good. A very good turnaround, especially in a Man City team that didn't have an out-and-out striker. As we were talking about Mason Mount earlier and being let down by other players, you can make the same argument for Kevin De Bruyne, and yet he's still got 12 assists. 6 goals is very solid as well. A really good season, per kind of in terms of his standards, which is a testament to his quality again. And as Harry Kane has said, it would be an absolute delight to play in front of.
But you went for the younger,
I went for the younger, better looking Kevin De Bruyne. Yeah,
younger,
you're right. With the
exactly.
bowl cut, Phil
Yeah.
Foden. I think Phil Foden has been unbelievable this season. And I think he's done it on all bases. He's done it in all competitions. He showed a real maturity this season, I think, as well. That is my reason for including him. You talk about future leaders. I will be surprised if Foden isn't the Man City captain within the next 5 years, and it isn't the Man City captain for at least another 5 years after that. I think he is just, Man City's pride and joy at the moment, coming through the academy, finally, somebody decent. 9 goals, 5 assists doesn't sound unbelievable, but considering he only started 17 games in the Premier League,
Yeah.
like those are 14 and 17 starts, goal contributions is a really good turnaround. He played 28, so he came off the bench 11 times. And even to have that sort of influence in a short amount of time on the pitch, it speaks wonders of his quality. His influence, I think, when he came off the bench was always noticed.
Mhm.
Even in the FA Cup, there was a few games where he came on late in the game and changed the game because he just takes it by the scruff of its neck and says, "Let's get stuck in here, boys." I saw an interview with Pep just recently, and he was saying now Phil Foden expects more. He said, back in the day, I would have given Foden 5 minutes at the end, 20 minutes at the end, brought him at half time, and he would have been fine. But now
Mhm.
he showed that he can do it, and he's coming to me saying, "Why am I not playing today
I
instead?"
think I saw
I,
that. Yeah.
I love that from him. I think that shows a real change in mindset and a real confidence that's growing in Phil Foden. And I expect him to do mad things in the Euros for England. I think he should be starting alongside Kane and will
Mhm.
really help Kane get the best out of his game. And Kane will also help Foden get the best out of his game. So it's a real win-win in that sort of situation. But yeah, Phil Foden was part of my team. So there are two complete teams, Joe. It might pop them up on the screen now for anybody watching. There is my team of the year one last time. We agreed on 9 positions. The only difference is we're Vladimir Kufal at the wrong side. There we go. Vladimir Kufal at right back and Phil Foden in midfield. Hopefully you don't hate me for that. If you have any thoughts, drop them in the comments or message us on the page and let us know. Here's Joe's. He had brought in Reece James and Kevin De Bruyne. Hard to argue with any of them. And that's the joy about football is there's so much subjectivity that it's up for debate. But Joe, that's not the end.
No, it's not. We are the StattoJoe podcast. We're all about the stats. So I had a look on SofaScore
Is it
at
me?
their team of the season.
Am
Now,
I the look that you had?
unfortunately, pardon?
Am I the look that you had?
Yeah, yes, yes, yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Um, so basically, the SofaScore one was a 3-4-3 formation.
Okay.
Um, and their team was as follows. They agreed with us on a lot of things, but there's a couple of really strange differences.
Okay.
Martinez and nets,
Great.
back three, John Stones, Ruben Diaz, and Luke Shaw.
Great.
The four midfield, Ilkay Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne, Bruno Fernandes, and
Ugh.
Mason Mount. And the front three of Harry Kane, Riyad Mahrez, and Jack Grealish. Now, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? They're based on the stats, so they're based on the scores they've given the players based on average ratings this season.
So I've seen certain people include both of those players that we haven't. So the only two players really that we haven't included from that are Bruno Fernandes and
Yep.
Jack Grealish. Bruno Fernandes, statistically, you look, he started 35 games, scored 18 goals, and got 12
Mm.
assists. Those numbers are really, really great.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just don't like the way he plays. I just don't think he plays overly well. He's been really helped by penalties, obviously.
That's what I was going to
Um,
say.
I don't know how many penalties he's actually scored. Do you have that stat?
I'll look it up now. You keep going. I'll look it up now.
Yeah, so he scored a lot of penalties, which I think has helped. He only like he has a decent number of shots per game, but doesn't seem to score them. He makes a decent number of key passes. He makes big chances, 20 all season. Like that's very good from him. But I just think he goes missing at key times for United and in big enough games this season. The Europa League final is a great example of that. He just disappears and he
Mm.
focuses too much on trying to win penalties. He focuses too much on trying to get free kicks. He doesn't focus on just getting his head down and getting stuck in like Phil Foden does. And so ultimately, that's why I picked Foden over him. I just like the mentality of Foden better, and I think it shows a better player. Bruno Fernandes almost looks like a player. As I said on the Europa League final live stream, he looks like a player who's taken all of the worst bits of Cristiano Ronaldo and put them on himself. Like he takes the arrogance, the cockiness, and the penalty taking of Ronaldo and says, "Those are great. I'll keep those, and I'll just be a scumbag as well."
Mm. Well, to answer your question, of the 18 goals that he scored, 9 of them were penalties.
9. So half the
Yeah,
goals he's scoring
he
are
scored this
penalties.
season were penalties. Yeah,
That
just shows
is
you.
quite high.
Yep, that's ridiculously high. I think it's the highest rate by a mile.
And so if you take those out, because Foden doesn't take penalties,
Yeah,
Foden would have the same number of goals and 7 less assists, but in 18 less starts.
yeah,
So you'd back Foden to get 7 assists in 18 games.
yeah.
I couldn't include him because I just really don't like the way he plays. But I think he has been great at United, and he has changed the mentality almost of the whole United
Absolutely.
team,
Yeah.
which is great. But no, not for me personally.
And then the other player was Jack Grealish, who the difference that when he played for Villa compared to when he didn't was massive. Um, when he did play, he had 6 goals, 10 assists, averaged 7.49, which is massive. But
Yeah,
there was a stat somewhere where it was like Villa's win rate when he played was like double when he didn't play. It was like 50% to 25%
yeah,
or something like that.
yeah,
So the influence he has on that team and their attacking is just crazy. Um, I can see why he's in the question for team of the season. For me, he didn't play enough games for me that I considered him because I felt that he hadn't made. I always feel like if you want to get really, unless you're exceptional, you need to be good for about 25 plus games. John Stone's an exception for me because he was next level for those 22 starts that he had. Um,
yeah.
but I do get Grealish being in the conversation. He's going to be in the conversation for England starting 11 as well. I don't know if he will because they played tonight, England, and he had started, and Ollie Watkins was playing, and a few of the players who weren't in the squad played tonight in the friendly just to give
Well,
them a
that
game, I
was
think.
purely because they didn't have that many players about, because
Mm.
all the players who played in the Champions League final weren't there.
Mm.
Um,
Right enough, I didn't pick
and
that.
they were all gone. That's why like Jesse Lingard played, because he kind of had to
Mm.
play because Mason Mount wasn't about and Phil Foden wasn't about. So I get why he played. He is an interesting one for England because I've heard rumors that he suffers from like shin splints
Mm.
quite often, and that's one of the reasons why that's kind of kept him back at times from playing a lot, is because he has that consistent injury, and that is an issue in tournament football like the Euros, and is why almost I think Gareth Southgate potentially might not trust him to play every game because he just doesn't have the fitness for it. So that's why they've got so many good options up front. Premier League wise, I can't make that argument about not playing enough because I picked Phil Foden, who played less. Um,
Mm.
well, less starts, fewer starts, sorry, but more total games played. 6 goals and 10 assists is very good in an average Aston Villa team. And if he had have kept playing, they probably would have been higher up in the table. Um, I like the way he plays, very direct. He gets at it, but I couldn't personally pick Grealish above Salah. Definitely not. Probably could have argued that he'd be above Mahrez, but they had largely similar stats, all things considered. And I just like the way Mahrez played this season.
And I think that's it. I think the only thing I would want to question is that the stats don't have Salah in their front three, which I think is crazy. But I think that is down to what we were talking about in terms of the number of chances that Salah's missed
Yeah,
this season. I think that affects his score overall. But I would never. I would have Salah as one of the first names down in my team. For
yeah,
me, the front three were the easiest to pick. And
absolutely.
then after that, it was a bit more difficult. But that'll do us tonight, I think.
Well, Joe,
Um,
before we wrap up, who do you think would manage the team of the season? Who do you think has been
oh,
manager of the season to go alongside the team? The
that's a good
managers,
question.
I think personally, the managers in question have to be Pep. One, because they won the league so
Yep,
convincingly, but I don't think he's going to win it, or I don't think he deserves to win it. I think David Moyes deserves a shout,
yep,
absolutely, and Brendan Rodgers.
yep.
Thomas Tuchel's an interesting one. You could argue he could, but I also don't think he should be in
No,
he's done an incredible job at getting them to win the Champions League. But in terms of Premier League, I think he's probably not up for the debate. So Pep, Moyes, and Brendan Rodgers, and then another shout would probably be Marco Bielsa. At Leeds, I think has done a really good job with Leeds. As much as it pains me to say that, but I think for me it probably has to be David Moyes.
I was going to say David Moyes too. I think it's harsh that you left out Ole Gunnar Solskjaer there, to be honest. But I think I would have picked David Moyes because I think the job he did at West Ham was outstanding. The results that they were able to get were just class. And overall, I think he has performed the best. So yeah, I think if we're going to put a manager in, I pick my Luke Sherwin Manager of the Year goes to David Moyes.
Great. And my Luke Sherwin Manager of the Year also goes to David Moyes.
Well, that'll do us for tonight. We're back on Sunday at 8 o'clock. We need to discuss what we're going to talk about. But we'll see what that will be, because obviously this is a bit of a filler period. There's Mikey says internet's been playing. Nightmare, gonna have to watch it back. But I've seen Joe and Reece James over Kufal. Joe, are you mad? I might be, and that's fair. And that's what the beauty of football is. We can have this debate, Mikey.
Mikey, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Joe always says in the podcast that he loves podcast listeners more, but I'm clearly here, a man of the people, picking Vladimir Kufal my team of the season.
Yeah, it's true. But we'll be back on Sunday. Probably do a Euros preview. Although we have 2 shows to do. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, that'll do us. Check us out on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts to listen back. Or if you want to watch us back on YouTube, watch it back on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and like all that good stuff. And yeah, we will be back Sunday night, 8 p.m. So we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Goodbye.